right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to episode 20 of the Real Estate Playbook. We are here in the year of 2022. Very fortunate to have made it to 20 episodes. Want to say first, thank you all for watching and joining us over the past 19. My guest today is someone very special, the Director of Sales and Training here at our brokerage 54 Realty, Mr. Tim Plumadore. Tim, how are you today, sir?
I'm great, Paul. Thanks for having me. I don't know how special I am, though.
Well, if I say it, it must be true, right?
All right, fair enough.
Tim, thanks for joining me, my friend. I have a couple things I want to talk to you about today. But before we start and getting into that, how about you tell us a little bit about your career, your background, how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, for sure. So this is my sixth year as a licensed real estate agent. I started out my journey really unsure about what to expect and was still a teacher at the time when I first got my real estate license. So I kept teaching for the better part of about 3 years as I figured out exactly what it was, I'm supposed to be doing and how to do it and things like that. At that time, I moved over to Keller Williams where I became a part of the leadership team there and started to build out my own real estate team. Then toward the latter part of 2019, I decided that I wanted to do something different and opened up my own brokerage, which I ran up until the point in time of taking this position. So did my own brokerage for a year, had assistants, had admin team and all of these things built out. But again, it wasn't exactly what I was looking for. So I'm excited to be in this position where I'll get to oversee agents and help you guys build your businesses, indirectly changing the lives of the people that you're working with too.
That's right, man, and we're happy to have you. Before I get into the questions here, Tim, I'm curious, what was your experience like starting your own brokerage? Because I haven't gotten the opportunity, aside from Joe, obviously, to talk to anybody who's done that.
Yeah. So again, towards the end of that year, Keller Williams was great. I don't have anything bad to say, but there was a lot of expectation as far as what we were to do. And there wasn't even a lot of thank you for those things. So I realized quickly that, all right, this isn't where I need to be. I need to be doing my thing. And so I went down the road of starting my own brokerage, and it was tricky. If I look back at my numbers, I realized, I was spending a lot of money, especially the first several months of getting the brokerage open. Things that I just didn't really think about, hey, I need a good printer, right? And the ink in that printer is very expensive. And just little miscellaneous things like that. All the paper, all the pens, all the scissors, the staplers, that was all expenses and costs that I not that I overlooked. I knew they were part of what I needed to do, but I was surprised at how quickly those things added up. So first few months in the brokerage were tricky as we were spending more than we were making. It was probably a little bit, 4 or 5 months into the brokerage experience that I finally was profitable.
Makes sense. So I've heard it, or at least that makes me think of, when people talk about starting a small business that's not real estate, you have to go usually a couple years without even seeing a real profit. So it sounds like a similar experience from what I'm hearing.
Yeah. Yeah. And the unique thing for me was I was already an agent. So, we had business. We just needed to bundle it differently. So my trajectory was a little faster, 4 or 5 months to profitability, but it still took, 4 or 5 months to profitability.
Absolutely. And correct me if I'm wrong. I remember editing a training that you gave recently where you were talking about, some of the people that you have on your team. And are those people that you've kept from when you were at the brokerage?
Yeah, actually not any longer. So now that I've accepted this position full time, I'm happy to say that both my assistants have gone on to bigger and better things than hanging out with me.
Awesome.
Yeah, so they've both got really good jobs. I do feel a sense of pride in that. I think that I helped train and develop some skills in them that allowed them to take those opportunities. But no, at this point, what you see here is what you get. I'm fully committed to 54 Realty and doing my job here.
Awesome, man. So I do want to talk to you a little bit more about the training and stuff, but before we get into that, so I was talking to Austin last week, if you saw last week's episode, about his education in real estate and his MBA as well, and how that has influenced / impacted his career. In reading your bio, actually, on our website, I discovered that you also have your MBA. So I was curious if you can speak a little bit to how that has affected you in your career, or if it hasn't at all, perhaps.
Yeah, sure. So I think the philosophical principle is that education is a useful thing, right? I don't think that anybody is foolish enough to say that education is bad, But what I will say is that, and I've used all my education, but not maybe necessarily to solve a math problem, right? But it's in complex thinking and seeing things a different way, being able to understand and digest higher level conceptualizing things like that. So that's where I think it's come into play for me. It's more the soft skills that I think allowed me to be successful in this business. People skills, when to communicate, how to communicate, things like that. The MBA, again, I think it's allowed me to view the world differently in a sense. I can understand a higher level thinking. But as far as it being a catalyst of success, I think it was just, it was something that I always wanted to do. We don't have a lot of educated folks in my family. And I think we've only got 5 bachelor degrees in the whole lineage of the family. And I'm the one master's degree. So that was something
Hey,
that I wanted to do for my kids, really specifically, was to set that bar for them. So that was why I did it.
makes sense, man. So yeah, Austin was saying something pretty similar, which is, you learn a lot of hard skills. He was saying, I think it was real estate finance that he went for. There's a lot of numbers involved, a lot of number crunching, and perhaps he knows the facts better than some would. But those soft skills, like you were saying, tend to play a more crucial role, especially in a real estate career. So maybe I'll ask you the same thing that I asked him, which was, have you always sort of had that aspect of your personality, the soft skills, the people skills, that sort of thing? Or is that something that you learned in a role that you've been in throughout your career?
I think both. I think naturally I am drawn to people. I like to get to know about them. I'm genuinely interested in people's story, because I think we all have something that we've been through, tragedy, triumphs, whatever it is. So I'm genuinely interested in people, which allowed me to build relationships naturally. But I spent a lot of time training and learning as well. I've attended a lot of different sales training courses. I've attended courses on language, on body posture, things of this nature, that allowed me to kind of, but with what I was naturally given, and the training and the, bringing it together is what allowed me to be most successful with those skills.
Makes sense, man. So that ties into a little bit what I wanted to talk to you about, which is training. So, like I said up top, Tim is the director of sales and training at 54 Realty. So I'm sure to a certain extent, Tim, you must have a passion, like you were saying, for education and for training. I'm wondering, what is your take on how impactful slash important proper training is to an agent's career?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's an interesting question that I want to answer like this. I can remember when I was 19 and 20 years old and thinking, man, I want to be successful, right? And I didn't know what that meant. At that time, I thought it was a lot of money, right? That was how I was defining success. If I could make 6 figures, right, at that time, 19, 20 years old. As I continued to grow up and kind of had kids and started to see the world a different way, I realized that training was really just a way for me not to fall behind. That people were always training, right? And I was an athlete majority of my life, so that was a thing that I was very normal in my life, to train and to work and to things like that. And coaches are always telling you, if you're not working, somebody else is, right? So I think the same is true in life. I think that people are always working on getting better, reading books, listening to podcasts, attending trainings, attending seminars, whatever it is. And if you're not, you're probably going to get passed up. Your talent's going to take you so far. So for me, that was something that I was always in my mind, just kind of bred into me, that I needed to always be training. And when I stopped being an athlete to train my body, I needed to train my mind. I needed to train my mouth. I needed to train my eyes, whatever it was. So I think that as an agent in any business, really, though, because it's life, if you're not working on developing your personal skills, whatever that means for you, your success is going to be further. It's just going to keep going away. As you get closer, it's going to inch a little further away. As you get closer, it's going to inch a little further away. So I'm a big advocate of reading, of listening to things that not doesn't have to be inspiring, but listening to things that I want to learn. Sometimes I'm in the car and I'm listening to a thesaurus, different words, right? But I know, and I'm weird, I get it, but that's something that I think is interesting. I like to have a big vocabulary and to confuse my wife when I get home with words that she doesn't know.
You should start a word of the day or something like that.
Love that. They have it at the gas pump sometimes, and I'm always,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, Tim, I definitely agree, man. I think it's important, and I've heard this from teachers in college, which is just to be a perpetual learner, like always be a student, throughout life.
Lifelong learner.
Absolutely. So I think that's an important thing for agents to adapt in their career, or adopt rather. And it's something that I've gotten into actually in previous episodes with people, which is it's very easy to think that a real estate agent or being a real estate agent can be kind of a solo, like an insular career where you kind of shut off all outside influences and you think, I can do this without any team, any support, any training, whatever. Come to realize in talking to top producers and people like yourself, which is if you want to be successful, if you want to have that long-term sustainability, you can't go it alone. You need to have that proper training, resources, team, whatever it might be. So it's glad to hear from someone like you that that holds true.
Yeah, I completely agree. I
Yeah.
completely agree. And that's part of the reason why I've come over here. I was missing a little bit of that team component in my little world that I was in this brokerage. It was me and my assistant, and we just kind of looked at each other all day, And so I'm excited to be here and be a part of something bigger.
Absolutely. So Tim, you were saying it's been 6 years now that you've been an agent.
Yep. Yep.
So you've then had some experience prior to this current market that we're in, which is, as we talk about pretty much every time, it's an insane seller's market. The conditions are quite unique. I'm wondering if you can speak to at all how the current market conditions have affected your business at all.
Yeah. So again, part of the decision making last year in 2021, as I moved through the year, got through those first 4 months that were a little challenging, and then given all the market conditions, I thought, okay, what am I going to do about this? So a decision that I made about 2 years ago was to pivot away from buyers altogether. I don't think this is great advice, but it was what worked for me in my little world that I was in. So we pivoted out of the buyer business about 2 years ago to strictly sellers. And so all of our focus, all of our marketing, all of our efforts was directed towards sellers, only sellers. Now, so a lot of those sellers are also buyers. So when that would take place, we would work them, but we wouldn't just, somebody off the street, hey, I want to buy a house. I would refer that out. That was one of the ways that I managed it. But again, I was in a unique position because I had been in the business for a few years. I'd established myself as a listing agent. And not for nothing, but I think a big part of my success is that I'm from Hernando County. I lived in Hernando County. I went to school in Hernando County, things like that. So I had a really good reputation prior to getting into this business. I was a teacher. I was a coach. I was all those things in the school system for a while. So by saying, hey, I'm going to eliminate this part of the buy, it didn't kill me because I had enough business to sustain what was happening on the seller side. I mean, even this past year, and this year I'll be out of production completely, but in 2021, we did 54 units. They're all sell side, the whole thing, all of them. So that was something that took a little chance, took a little leap of faith by saying we're going to eliminate that. What it was, Paul, is I needed to be smarter with my time. So it depends. I say that I wouldn't do any buyers, but I'll do new construction. Right. Because once I sign them up and get them going, then, I'm pretty much done. Right. I'll get my check in 12 to 18 months. So it was just a pivot, a business philosophy. Those were the challenges that I saw we were facing. I didn't want to have to show 9 homes and write 16 offers. Right. So but again, I don't think that's great advice as far as just cut the buyers out of your business. But just be smart with your time. I do a real good job of pre-qualifying a buyer on a call. They get one for free is what I used to always say. I'll go show them a house first time for free. The second time they better be ready, kind of a thing. So that's how I handled it. Again, I don't think it's perfect, but it worked for me.
Absolutely, man. So I think that that's an interesting premise too, because a lot of people can be intimidated by working the seller side, especially if they're used to being a buyer's agent. So I'm wondering, and you don't have to spill any secret sauce or anything, but do you have any tips for agents who might be looking to get more listings?
Yeah, I think you have to work the buy side to get the experience first. That's the truth. For lack of a better way of saying it, the harder side of the business is the buyer side. You have to show the houses, you have to order the inspections, you have to be on top of the lender. Whereas on the listing side, it's like I need to do a great job in my marketing. I need to get great photos, but these are all things that you leverage to other people. And that was where I realized, like, hey, this is where the opportunity is for me, because I can leverage listing coordination. I can leverage photography. I can leverage MLS input. I just got to answer phones and negotiate contracts. Right. So that was how we went about it, and how we approached it. And again, it was what worked for me and for us, for my assistant.
Yeah, makes sense. So I think that's great advice to anybody out there. That's something that we revisit a lot, which is, how do you get listings? So listen to Tim, people.
Yeah.
So my next question, or questions rather, Tim, are all regarding yourself and your career. I think you're a great influence. You're a great role model for people to look to. So I want to ask you this. Throughout your career, what would you say is your biggest strength if you could narrow it down to one thing?
Genuinely caring about the people involved in the transaction. So I've never approached any single transaction like, how much money will I make on this deal? I've always approached every single transaction as, what does Paul need to accomplish from this deal? And then I'm always paid in proportion to the service I provide every time. And that's how that's been my, my philosophical approach to the business. I'm going to provide great service, and then I'm typically going to end up being paid for that great service. So that was my biggest strength. I realized, like, hey, don't be the salesman, be the consultant, be the friend, be the guy that they can trust. And I've had that a lot over the years. Like, hey, my sister's a real estate agent, but I'd rather work with you because I think you're honest. So that was always my approach. I've never told anybody anything that was a lie. I've never, things like that. Even if it was a difficult thing that I needed to tell somebody, it was easier to just tell them the truth and deal with it than it was to try to skate around it. Because it always finds out. Everything always comes to light.
This is true. I think that's a great philosophy to live and work by because, again, I hear this from a lot of top producers. I think Chris actually said this in one of the early episodes, and as we know, she's quite successful, which is you can put in the work and you can know everything there is to know on the real estate exam or whatever it might be, and you can know the lingo. But if you don't care at the end of the day, that's going to show to your clients and the people that you work with. So
they'll feel that.
Yeah,
they'll feel
absolutely.
that. We used to joke and call it commission breath. Right? Like puppy breath, but commission breath. That people, a broke salesperson stinks. They can smell you coming.
I used to work at a car dealership, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, you can see them coming. Those guys smelled like cigarettes, but these guys smell like
and Dracar Noir.
Yeah.
So Tim, obviously not everything is sunshine and rainbows, so everybody has hurdles they've had to overcome. I'm wondering if you could, I hate to use the word weakness, but if there was a weakness or a hurdle that you've experienced, if you could speak to that at all.
I got two, and I think the first one's kind of funny. The first one was I had to give myself permission to make this kind of money. That was a mental obstacle for me for the first few years. When I received a check for $5,000-$6,000 the first few years, I felt guilty about it. In a sense, like, again, in my family, we've had a lot of love, but we didn't have a lot of money, right? So as I started to make some money, I was like, man, is this? I'm gonna screw this up. Right? I don't have any example of what it looks like to make some money. I don't have anybody that I can ask, So in the beginning, it was like this weird mental exercise that I was playing with myself where I was self-sabotaging, essentially is what I was doing. And I went to a Tony Robbins event, and that was where I kind of discovered that I was self-sabotaging myself and I needed to give myself permission, to make however much money I could, that my time was limited here and, I needed to get after it. So that was my first weakness. It wasn't until I changed my mindset around, hey, you're worthy of this. You can make this kind of money. You can have all these things you want. I was in my way before that. And then the second part of my weakness was I grew impatient. Over a 5-year period where not impatience like, hey, Paul, we need to do this business right now, but impatient with questions, impatient with what to expect during my inspection. And, it was like I knew the job so well that it was like, just leave me be and let me work. And that was a bad approach. And I started to take that approach sometime in 2019 when, and again, that's where I started to pivot away from the buyers because I was frustrated with their questions and things. But again, what I realized was I needed to build out a better team around me. I was working too hard. I was doing too much. I wasn't leveraging things I could, so my two weaknesses were that, the mental block that I was running into. And then the second one that I found in my leadership along the way was that I needed to delegate more. I needed to leverage more. I needed to allow people to do things for me instead of saying, hey, I got it.
That is two great pieces of advice. The first thing that you said made me think of a piece of advice that I've heard, not just in my professional life, but in my personal life, which is if you are accomplishing great things or you're going through a particularly positive patch in your life, certain people tend to think, okay, well, when is the bad going to come, right? So that I would say would contribute to getting in your own way, like you said. So that's a great point. I think that's great advice for some people out there to take. So it's very easy to get in your own way.
Success is lonely. That's what some people don't realize, right? When you're at the top, there's nobody else around to talk to. So that was something for me that was an interesting discovery along the way as well.
Makes sense, man. You're dropping some gems today, Tim, I must say. My next question for you, sir, and it seems like you've worn many hats over the years, so this might be a fun one, which is if you hadn't chosen real estate as your long-term career, what might you see yourself doing otherwise?
Yeah, if I wasn't doing this, I taught for 5 years, but prior to being a school teacher and a coach was really why I went to do that. I worked in professional sports. And that's where I would be, I would think, if I wasn't doing this. In college, I did an internship for the Bucks in marketing. It was a really good experience. I got to meet a lot of really smart people that were advocates for me, which allowed me to take a job down in Miami for the NBA's Miami Heat. So I was down there for a little while when LeBron James came originally to Miami. I was there at all that stuff. And we broke a ton of sales records there, and it was a blast, and it was a lot of fun. Again, I'm an athlete. I love sports. So it's just, as you can imagine, it's a very exciting environment, to work in and things like that. It's always buzzing, always kind of upbeat and always kind of positive. Everybody, when you call and say, hey, I'm calling from the Miami Heat, people take that call, right? As opposed to say, hey, this is Tim with the Plumadore Group, right? They're like, who? What? Like, Miami Heat gets me in the door. So, I had a lot of fun with that. The teaching was great too. The coaching was a great experience as well. In fact, I've still kind of stayed connected to that. My buddy took over the basketball team that I left. When I left the high school, they said, who do you have a recommendation for hire? I said, you should hire Matt, who's one of my very best friends and was the JV coach at the time. So Matt is still the coach 10 years later. And, I kind of stay connected as like a consultant, if you will, so I played college basketball as well. So that, that's where some of the knowledge comes from. So if I wasn't doing this, I'd be in sports somewhere. At least that's what I would like to be doing.
I think a lot of us would. So we were talking earlier about being a lifelong student. It sounds like you're a lifelong teacher now.
That's an interesting thing that I don't think somebody should say about themselves. But I have a lot of friends that come to me for advice. I've always been that person for my family. I enjoy the role. It's a pressure-filled role, right? Everybody expects me to have the answers, but it's who I am, and I've embraced that over the last couple of years.
Well, that's awesome, man. I got to ask you this, though. Did you ever meet LeBron?
Yeah, twice.
He's a cool guy or what?
Yeah, I mean, it was really just, hello, how are you? Nice to see you. He's massive, I'll tell you that. The dude is bigger in person than you think he is. Shoulder to shoulder, he's about as wide as you are tall, right? He's unbelievable. So, but yeah, cool guy. They didn't hang out with him or anything like that.
Yeah, I imagine he's pretty busy.
Yeah. They kind of like, I have a funny story, but I won't share here. But Pat Riley from the Miami Heat, there was a whole protocol in our handbook, an employee handbook. Do not speak to, look at, think about, approach, dream of Pat Riley. Like, leave him alone.
He does not exist as far as you're concerned.
Don't speak to him.
That's hilarious, man. So, Tim, this has all been great, man. I just had one more question for you before we dip out of here. If you could give one succinct piece of advice to new agents or agents who might be struggling in the current market, what would your advice be to them? Oh,
good question. I think the one piece of advice that I would give to anybody in anything they're going after is perseverance. There are going to be obstacles. There are going to be things that don't go well. There are going to be challenging clients. There are going to be challenging deals. Perseverance. Get through it, get on to the next one, get through it, get on to the next one. That's the name of the game. And so that would be my advice, is just keep going. I guess, for lack of a better term, just keep swimming, like Dory would say, but I think as funny as that was, Pixar meant that, right? That was on purpose. So it's true. I think that a lot of people tend to quit before they get to the gold, and it's closer than it appears.
Awesome, Tim. Yeah, and that makes me think of there's a meme, so I might be reaching on this one a little bit, but it's the guy that's like, he's mining or something.
Oh yeah,
he keeps going through all the dirt, and the diamond's right on the other side, but he gives up.
Turns back. Yeah,
there you
exactly.
go.
I've seen that.
I'll put it on the screen.
Not that old. Yeah.
I was like, I'll put it on the screen so I don't sound completely crazy.
Yeah.
But Tim, that's awesome, man. All great advice all around. I want to say thank you again for joining me, sir. This was kind of a last minute thing, but I know you're a busy guy and you made the time, and I do appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate what you're doing, Paul. I've been watching from behind the scenes, and I think it's a good thing. So I'm glad to be a part of it.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate that. And speaking of that, we did move into a new office, like I said last week. So we got some interesting scenery changes coming soon here. Stay tuned for that. Well, Tim, thanks again, man. I really appreciate you.
All right, Paul. Take it easy.
Yes, sir. You too.
Bye-bye.
All right. That was episode 20. Tim Plumadore. I want to say thanks again to everyone for tuning in. 20 episodes in the book. Hopefully we can grab another 200. We'll see how that goes. Like I said, we're moving into a new studio here pretty soon, so keep an eye out for that. I'm very excited about it. We might be able to have some in-person guests, which would be a nice change of speed. As always, you can follow us at the Real Estate Playbook across social media, Instagram, Facebook, etc. Visit us at our website, therealestateplaybook.com. Make sure you're subscribing on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you might be listening. And just wanted to say thanks again for all the support to everyone out there, all the guests, all the people who have been watching and listening. I do appreciate you guys. And let's make it a great new year, y'all. I'll see you next week.